Hello, my name is Ron, and today is December 3rd, 1998. I've been asked by some friends if I would convey to you on tape a very special story. This story I'm about to tell you I've lived, and it is a little bit extraordinary. I hope that it's worth your time to hear me out. Many times when I've talked to farmers and my city cousins, I stress the importance of upholding your rights under the law. I try to stress that to the point that really only you can enforce your rights. And you need some basic knowledge in order to do that. And so when you want your rights asserted, go to the mirror and look at the person who's going to assert them, who has the obligation to assert them. That's important for your freedom, for your liberty in this country, and the feeling of well-being. Well, there's another field that my friends are very lax on, and that subject is their own physical well-being. You see, all tend to believe that there is professional help out there that can take care of whatever physical ailment or deficiency they may have when the time comes. Many folks buy insurance, and I have a philosophy that those that buy insurance and believe in that for their health are misguided, because they dump their own personal responsibility to keep themselves fit and healthy on this thing that they write a check out to every month and say, well, when it happens to me, I don't have to worry about it now, but when it happens to me, they'll take care of me. Well, most insurance companies do pay pursuant to the contract for these medical services. But there's two things you really need to watch out for, and they're very crucial to how long you live. Number one, don't use any crutch to substitute for you taking care of your own health. And number two, you cannot fully rely on the professionalism of doctors to do what is good for you. If you do not possess the knowledge to know quite a bit about your health and about the practice of medicine, your life will be shortened. That's kind of serious. There are two ways that most of the lives are shortened in this country. One of the ways is the medical establishment withholding treatment that they know will help you. That's one of the ways. And the other way is by administering treatments that they know don't work. Now, we lose 80% of our fellow Americans due to these two causes. Yeah. And I have supporting information for that. Just last Friday, on public television, in the middle of the night, there were 2 doctors being interviewed. And the topic at that particular time was Jack Kevorkian, who is, the name rings a bell with most citizens in this country. But they moved around the subject. And of course, euthanasia was the root cause of getting the group together that was responding. Now, these medical doctors are the ones that put the number in the air and said, to the best of their knowledge and belief, these 2 reasons were the cause of 80% of the deaths the day they died in this country. I'm sure you can obtain that information from public television. Now, that level, and about that level, has been what I was able to determine in the efforts that I put forth to try to see what was going on. What I'm about to tell you is not to be taken by you as an effort on my part to practice medicine or to promote any product of anybody's. I'm going to try to convey information for you so that you can use your mind to do further research and to do the things necessary to protect yourself. You see, the farmers asked me if I had the opportunity and would take the time to investigate the number 1 and number 2 causes of death in this country. And that was right up my alley because of a personal experience I had. And as soon as the opportunity came, I grabbed it. Because I wanted to know. I really wanted to know what was out there. You see, over my lifetime, I had heard of exotic treatments. And I've heard that exotic treatments don't work. And I've heard that there are things in other countries that we don't have in our country. And of course, if they exist, why? Or do they work, and why don't we have them? So many questions that interest me. See, when I was a kid, I was taught to take care of livestock. And I got to do that quite a bit. Even had my own livestock as I got older. And I watched and listened to veterinarians to see what they knew. And I knew that veterinarians cost money. As a matter of fact, I got to pay some. But there was one thing I noticed that was so important, and that is that there was a time lag between we noticing a sick animal and the time that it took the veterinarian to get there. That those hours seemed to be very crucial. And it seemed that if I could learn how to treat my own animals, number 1, I could save the mileage and the fee charged by the veterinarian. Because, you know, I noticed one thing. Even after the veterinarian treated the animal and the animal would pass on to the hereafter, I still stuck with the bill. And so I figured, well, especially in the case of sheep, who seem to have one will in life, and that's to roll over and die, that perhaps I could do better by administering timely. You know, and I was always kind of squeamish as far as needles are concerned, you know, because I got these vaccinations when I was a kid. I didn't exactly like them. But I learned to dish it out. And, you know, got so good at it that the sheep only died at old age. And of course the lamb crop percentage increased, and we had good stock. Had a whole big box full of Grand Champion ribbons. We kind of knew what we were doing in that, and of course I wanted to keep them alive, so I learned how to do that. And old ewes weren't worth very much, you know. Not worth the transportation to market. So if you keep them up and pumped up and living and so forth, you got another lamb, maybe 2, maybe 3. That worked good. But you developed a sixth sense in the process, and that was you could almost look at a sheep in the eyes and determine a day or 2 in advance when they were going to get sick. And of course, that was the time to get on the program and treat them. Because 2 days later, you could recognize the signs of being ill, but it was short-lived because the effort had already taken place. The help was on its way. The immune system had extra tools to work with. Well, I remember my father telling me that when he was a young man, he got very sick. He was diagnosed with having MS, multiple sclerosis. And in those days it was a little hard to get around, you know. So they had a 1929 Model A Ford pickup. And my dad got so bad, you know, he couldn't get out of bed, he couldn't do anything. And so my grandfather picked him up one day and he put a mattress in the box of that Model A pickup, and he drove my father to Rochester, Minnesota. Now, my dad's telling me this, and my dad says, you know, I didn't think there was much hope for nothing. But I went there because there was nothing else to do, and I wasn't opposed to that. And so the doctors, they reviewed me, and they determined I had multiple sclerosis. And of course, you know, when my dad's telling me this, he looks to me to be fine. You know, and he's at retirement age. Well, watching the Jerry Lewis telethon and so forth, you know, I got to thinking, boy, you know, that MS is, apparently some people must survive it. Well, at that point in time, the Mayo Clinic was unregulated. They could take any treatment that existed in the world and administer it freely, without control, using their best judgment as doctors to administer whatever was available. And that's why Mayo got such a big name around the world, because they brought in the treatments from all over the world that had been used successfully. Well, I asked my dad, what did they give him? And he said, you might find this hard to believe, but they injected me with typhoid fever. I said, typhoid fever, that kills people. Yeah. Yeah, he said. And he said, boy, I thought I was sick before. But he said, I really got sick with the injection of typhoid fever. You want to stop the tape? I'm sorry for the interruption. I made the mistake of failing to lock the door, and so I was distracted. My father was injected with typhoid fever, and of course, you know, that's a very, very serious disease itself. And he got very, very ill from it. He already was ill, but he said he didn't know if he was going to make it. But the disease, typhoid fever, affected the sheath on the nerve insulation to the point that the immune system, being fully addressing the typhoid fever, got away from attacking the nerve insulation for just a while and give that the chance to start, to change, and to repair slowly. But by changing that little bit of the nerve fiber, the immune system left it alone. Thus, the end of the disease. It was just a matter of healing up after that. And my dad lived to the age of 85. So, there are unorthodox treatments. That happened in my own family. Well, that gives you hope to look then. I'm going to show you a picture. This is a picture of my wife. Now, my wife developed a form of MS known as chronic inflammatory myeloradicular neuropathy. And the establishment, under its policies and procedures, treated that disease by introducing immune destroyers. Now, they felt their job was to tear down the ability of the immune system, and by so doing, they would alleviate, at least, or slow down the speed of the disabling disease. Because when the insulation is gone on a wire, it shorts out, and you know that the electricity, not much of it gets through. And that happens, and of course, when you got lack of signal, the muscle just deteriorates. It just starts going away. It doesn't have much ability anymore to produce. It's electric stimulus that causes it to build up, you know, for you to do what you do. Well, they took it down, 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 down. And the result of taking the immune system down was the most dreaded disease in this country: cancer. Well, we'd always worked as a team on the farming operation. We each had half of the responsibilities. We each worked hard, and we thought that together we could whip this one. We will do everything that the doctors recommend, and we won't miss it. We'll do it. We're going to prevail. Well, we sure had an eye-opening, because every time they did something, it just took her down another peg. Down, down, down. That's pretty disheartening. So we decided to look elsewhere to see if we could find something. And the Japanese had developed a gene-spliced protein that they were testing, and it appeared to be very successful. We found that there was 5 companies within the United States that was making it. We talked to 3 of them. We asked them if we could get some of the material on an experimental basis to try, because nothing else was working. And everything they did was taking her down more. They said sure they'd furnish it. They'd even furnish it at no charge if we could get permission from the Food and Drug Administration in this country. It's called a compassionate exemption. And we applied. And we asked the congressman to help us, and we asked the senator to help us, trying to get this permission. A very good friend of mine went to the Food and Drug Administration and personally talked to the man in charge. Personally went there to see to it that the guy actually, because all we were missing was his signature on the document. To let us use that, to try it. And we were refused. A simple signature. We were refused. Even had a doctor here locally that in writing said he would administer it. So then I was wondering, what's going on here? Could our government be the third factor? Could our government actually be one standing in the way of whether we live or die? And the answer to that is yes. At least standing in the way of letting you try. That's a shame. My wife wasn't able to make it. She died at the age of 42. And left 3 children. Now I figured if the opportunity ever came for me to go and look and see if there are any alternative treatments to cancer, that I'd do it. I would go anywhere, basically do anything to check those out if I could. Well, that opportunity came, and it came quite unexpectedly, and it came in a circumstance that no one would ever be able to foresee. One evening, about midnight, quite accidentally, I came across a member of what I call the underground in medicine. And I took a liking to this guy because he was willing to share some information with me that I knew from what I had been through and what I had learned on the traditional cut, burn, and poison theory of treating cancer, that doesn't work. And he seemed to have done a tremendous amount of research. And of course, I was sucking it up like a sponge because I was ready for it. And I can only relay to you what he told me. And then I can relay to you the results. But because of my interest and my sincerity, or at least apparent sincerity, I was given special permission to enter the underground door to see. See, at the time, I didn't even know that I needed to know what I was about to learn to save my own life. Yeah. I had to learn how to treat myself, to save myself. And I had to because I didn't have insurance. And I didn't have money. At least not the kind that it requires to get cancer treatment in a conventional facility today. The average person now runs up a bill of $200,000 from the time it's diagnosed till they get the box. And then from the box on is extra. There's a lot of money in the business of cancer. A tremendous amount of money. This friend I met had another friend, a very interesting friend, a fellow by the name of Ed Tiller. Ed Tiller is the physicist that did the physics on the atom bomb for the United States of America. And I remembered every time my wife had obtained chemotherapy, when she had an operation, and when she got radiation. And that struck a nerve with him. He said, your wife had radiation? I said, yeah. Do you know where? And yeah, and I knew everywhere. Because they took a, kind of a pen type thing, and they marked the area with dots to line up with the machine for radiation. And of course they would put the lead around those areas, so that only that area exposed would receive the radiation, at least most of the radiation. And he asked me if I could draw those out. Yeah. I said, they won't be 100%, but they'll be awfully close. And he said, close is enough. And so I did, every place, and to the best of my memory, of the exact area, how big it was. I mean, when you live it, you know. And he took a ruler and he did his measurements, and he did his computations. And he asked me if I knew how many rays of radiation would cause death. I didn't even know that. He said, 500 rads of radiation will kill you. Well, he totaled this all up based on what he was taught by Dr. Tiller. And this number is not to be assumed as being absolutely correct, but close. You understand? My wife, Jean, got 8 times the lethal dose of radiation. It was a total, complete, physical impossibility to live because of the treatment. Just that one treatment of radiation. That one kind of treatment. So he's keeping track of the radiation. Who? You? Your doctor? I dare say nobody is. So how many rads have you had so far? I was shocked. Now my wife had chemotherapy, and I wanted to know how that worked. And this fellow said it does work. Yeah, chemotherapy will kill cancer cells, and it kills them at the point of division. But it doesn't discriminate. It kills good cells too. And it is a very, very good destroyer of the immune system. So I wanted to understand more. And I asked him, I said, what is cancer? He said, you don't know? And I said, no. You've been through all of this and you don't know what it is? And I said, no, I don't. Well, he said it's a cell that arithmetically divides. He said at the point of conception, he said, you and I were what they call a trophoblast cell. One cell that was tuned to divide very quickly. As a matter of fact, it wasn't hooked to a blood supply, so it fermented its own oxygen. Well, I knew fermenting would, some circumstances you could create oxygen. I didn't know that. And he said, 56 to 60 days after conception, you're still 100% cancer, because that is cancer. And after that, the spleen starts to develop and it starts to kill off through the body's efforts the cancer cells, and it starts to slow things down. He said otherwise, he said from the time of conception, it could take many, many, many years before you would have evolved to the size necessary to be born. So he says it's a very important part. And he said every day that you live, your body will make some new cancer cells. Because not every cell it creates is perfect for what you need now. And he says only one thing controls it, and that's the immune system. And if you've got a deficient immune system, you will get cancer. If it's defective and missing a couple of chemicals it needs to penetrate the cancer cell. So he said cancer is an immune deficiency. And I said, well, how would you know if you had an immune deficiency? He said, if you get one cold a year, you're deficient. Yeah. If you get one cold a year. And he says it's from that point, the sky's the limit. Well, gee, what's the cause of the deficiency? Well, in most people, deficient diet over a period of time. Well, I eat good. He said don't eat right. And even if you did, you're going to have to supplement these days because of all the food processing. Well, generally, I said, have you got a philosophy on what is wrong in America as to why we have so much cancer? This fellow said, look, he said right now, a third of the people in this country are going to die of cancer. And that's increasing rapidly. He said, I was in a country where only 9 per 1,000 died of cancer. Well, that's far less. Yeah, and it was a poor country, he said. He said, just the country south of us. Diet is a factor. He said there's another factor. And he said, because we have not been taught how to do a proper diet, we subject ourselves to low deficiency rates, and to try to cover up for that, we receive the vaccinations. We, the people, received the vaccinations right when we were a very small kid. Can't even talk yet. We start getting these. And so we have our body full of diseases, about every major disease in the world. And we are taxing our immune system every day that we live once we've gotten those diseases in our body. Because the immune system is busy fighting all of those. And so we have a special need to keep that immune system high because it's being overtaxed right now. We're getting all the major diseases of the world. Randy, will you shut this off, please? And apologize for the interruption. And I'll try to continue here where I left off. That immune system is being heavily taxed by all of these diseases. You see, throughout the ages, man has survived the plagues of the world because there were those that either didn't get exposed to these major diseases at that time, or they had a sufficient immune response to take care of it. Well, now, with most of us having all of the major diseases, we have the immune system addressing that constantly, and we are not addressing the backside of that problem, which is doing whatever we've got to do to keep that immune response up. And you can do quite a bit to keeping it up. Well, I said, in the case of cancer, I said, what's the real deficiency? I mean, what have we got to do? And he said, the two chemicals that he identified were trypsin and chymotrypsin. When those two chemicals are deficient in the immune system, everyone will get cancer because the immune system falls behind on penetrating, killing, and hauling away the cancer cells. And so then I said, if I had cancer and if I got chemotherapy and I killed all the cancer cells in my body, I said, how long before I would have cancer again? And he said, your body makes cancer cells every day. And he said it wouldn't be too long before it would show up. If you didn't do something about building that immune system up and build it up quickly, it would run away again. And I said, well, what about these tumors? He said the tumor is an interesting thing because it's the body's ability to encapsulate those cancer cells, trying to hold them in place. Well, I said, sir, I said, you know, I've got a big tumor on my back right now. He said, I know, I've seen it. I said, I suppose when I get the time and the money to go to a doctor to have it biopsied, I'll know whether it's malignant or not. And he said, why would you want to do that? He almost knocked the wind out of me. Well, why would I want to do that? Well, I said, well, why wouldn't I? Well, because the body now has it encapsulated. If you stick a needle in it, you'll have cancer cells in the bloodstream. They don't start in the bloodstream. And I said, but one would need to know if he had cancer to treat the the tumor. And he said, no. The treatment's the same whether it's malignant or not. Oh. You got to get rid of the tumor. You enhance the immune system where it needs enhancing, and the tumor will go away. Or you can cut it out, or you can burn it out. But he said when you radiate it, he said it'll release the cancer cells and they'll move. The radiation causes cancer. It's one of the causes. So why would you want to radiate to kill cancer? Oh, you can get rid of the tumor by radiating it. So you've dispersed it now. So anyway, that's the body's mechanism of holding in place this concentration of of cancer cells. It's trying to hold it there till the immune system can make a proper response. As soon as it makes a proper response, it just starts shrinking and going away, because the need for it, the natural need for it, is no longer there. So I went on. I had so many questions I couldn't believe it. And this conversation went on for days, not just minutes, because I needed to know more. And he said, to men, for instance, it's prominent in men that they have what is called, he said, let's take this for example, prostate cancer. He said that you can tell when that's coming on by the PSA, a test. And he said, you can do something about that. And he said, you got to understand one basic fact of medicine, and that is the natural things that you can use are not patentable. And when they're not patentable, you can't make but a fraction of the money off of those as you can the patented material. Besides that, most can administer the natural things to themselves, which doesn't require professionals that charge tremendous fees per hour. Tremendous fees. And so the incentive is not there. He's meaning, i.e., the dollar signs aren't there. But he says that it's coming along. That system is coming along of the natural products. And he said some of those can be used in high concentrated forms to dramatically affect the progression and remission of cancer. So I said, what does a person have to take to raise that trypsin and chymotrypsin level? He said, I want you to know that the diets across the board in America today are shorted of intake of amino acids. And there is the root cause of most of the cancer problem. Shortage of intake of amino acids. And I said, well, there's a lot of amino acids. Yeah, he said there is. But he said there's one special one that makes a lot of difference in the immune response on cancer cells. And he said that's an amino acid known as L-arginine. Now you can buy it at any health food store. He said it's relatively inexpensive. It's a great supplement. He said there's other things that enhance that, like coenzyme 10. Yeah. And there was many, many other things that enhance that. Just wanted to bring a couple to your attention so that you can start looking, so you can start searching, so you can live. I mean, being that I was going to get the information, I certainly had lots of questions. At that particular time, all of the stress and so forth that my family and I had been through, it got to the point where antacids couldn't even begin to help me anymore. And so I got some free advice. My free advice was, stop taking them. They're counterproductive. They're not going to address the problem. They're creating a haven for the problem to escalate. Oh boy. I don't know, at that point in time, if I can even believe what I'm hearing. But I had the problem. And I'll tell you, I wanted to believe. That's human nature. You want to believe. And he said, I'll fix something up for you, and we'll start working on that problem. We don't have much to work with where we are, but we'll start. Yeah. And it was only a few days. Started feeling a little better. Man. But he's watching me, wouldn't let me take any antacids whatsoever. Well, I can tell you that I used an old Indian formula to take care of the tumor on my back. And I used what amounted to be hot soups made with cayenne pepper and Tabasco sauce to start to attack the H. pylori, a bacteria that was out of control in my stomach. And he said, you can take care of that now, or you can take care of it when you get intestinal cancer or colon cancer. This choice is up to you. Well, I didn't think those other, avenues was too good. And so he said let me right now tell you that I have some praise for the establishment, the medical establishment in this country. They're probably the best in the world, he said, when it comes to treating a bacterial infection or a viral infection. He said they're very good. Go there if you got those problems. He said if you got a broken bone, he said they are very good. Go there if you got that problem. But he says when it comes to treating the major diseases in this country, which is heart attack and stroke and cancer and arthritis, and he named a bunch of others, he said you better do something else, because there's much better treatments that are far less intrusive, that are far less health damaging. As a matter of fact, some of them are downright health improving. And so he said, they got this here old antibiotic here, he said. I said, it won't take too much of this. He said, you take 3 of these a day, because there's 3 little tablets in it. Well, it says right on the label here, levomisol, 40 milligrams, for just 5 days. And he said, you won't have an H. pylori problem anymore. The problem in your stomach will just go away. Well, I'm here right now, and I'm telling you, I haven't had antacids from that time on. I have absolutely no heartburn, no upset stomach, at any time, anywhere. Just don't. And it feels so good. He told me the story of this doctor in West Australia, out in the bush, who accidentally came upon this and started treating with this old antibiotic. It's cheap. It's cheap. And he ended up speaking in Europe, a conference that they had there where all the sophisticated doctors of the world meet. And this was his new discovery, that he could cure ulcers in 2 weeks with his old, cheap antibiotic. And he said they really didn't want to hear that, but that's what he said. Yeah, I mean, it works. Makes you feel good. The tumor in the back. I'd heard about this substance, you know, but I didn't know what they called it. So let's just say it's X, because everybody that I've met just calls it X. You know, X. I managed to get a little bit of that. And I put a speck of it, just a very minute speck of it on the end of a toothpick. Now this tumor was close to the surface. And I just touched it to that area. And I could tell right away, stuff was happening. He said on about the 10th day, he said the body will have separated from that. It'll be sealed off. When the tumor comes out, there'll be a humongous hole there, but that'll all fill back in, he told me. And he said it probably won't even bleed a drop. Well, on the 10th day, it was time to change the dressing in that area. And the only one around to do that was my youngest son. And I asked him if he would pull the bandage off, you know, the bandaged area off, and clean it up. And resupply we had some 98% aloe vera that we were putting on the top. And he said, as he was wiping, he said, you know, my dad, there's something strange here. He says, there's this big white ring all the way around here, and the tumor seems to be loose. He said, it's getting looser. Well, I said, son, can you take it off? Probably can, he said. I said, well, grab and see if you can. Dig in and see if you can take it out. Well, it come, because it was separated from the body. It came. There was no tugging to it. And when my son saw that hole, he turned white as a sheet, almost passed out on me. We put that big tumor in a sandwich bag, zip top, and we put it in the deep freezer and froze it, because my son was going to take it to school for show and tell. So you know how old he was at the time. And he took it to school. And he said, he left it in the bag, you know, sealed in the bag. And he said the rest of the kids were so interested in that. And the teacher was just appalled that somebody would bring a tumor to school and tell about it. Well, I had one problem remaining after that area healed up, and that is that the tumor was rooted into the spine, into the vertebrae. And so something had to be done about fixing that. Well, there's a company in Germany. The term they put on things is, the name is Regeneration. And they have a product called Vertebrae. I managed to get a little of that. And I gave myself the shot. And that problem in the back started improving. Now, this is coming on 4 years since I gave myself that shot. And as I sit here today, it's still improving. Now you see, you can spend the time and the patience when you're constantly improving, and you can do more and more and more. And you feel better and better and better. But my vertebrae got rebuilt by injection. Now this is something that is absolutely remarkable. They can rebuild 240 different organs and glands and parts of the body by injection. These people are that far ahead of the rest of the world. This is a German company. They're that far ahead. Speaking of Germany, this friend of mine gave me a publication and said, "Here, read this." It's called the Townsend Letter for Doctors. I'm going to give you this information here just in case you'd like to read some of the stuff that I've read. The Townsend Letter for Doctors address is 911 Tyler Street, Port Townsend, Washington. Zip 98368-6541. There was an article in there about cancer. And I recognized who they were talking about right away because the names were Nancy and Ronald Reagan. Both had been diagnosed with the big C. Now we all weren't aware of that, but we were aware that they went and that they had a problem and that there was some things taken out or some things adjusted and so on and so forth. What we weren't told, though, was that they both jumped on Air Force One and went to Germany for treatment. We weren't told that. And they saw a doctor over there by the name of Hans Nieper. Yeah. And they got treatment and they got material to come home with to treat themselves. Now my last check was they is both still alive, and there's nothing in the news that says that either one of them is dying of cancer. Now most of us don't have access to Air Force One and free fuel. Most of us don't have access to the knowledge of that level. But I have, with these eyeballs, seen the material that they were given used on people that were dying of cancer. And it has an affinity for cancer cells second to none. It kills cancer cells so fast that you got to be careful as to how much they get, because the body can only kill and carry away so many in a 24-hour period. Yeah, really exists, really works. Yeah. Anyway, when one has prostate cancer, for instance, and you kill the prostate cancer. I mean, you don't have it there no more. Well, you got a deficiency yet. The prostate has been damaged. Now, by the way, these are all empties I'm showing you. These are things that I gathered up when I was where things was really happening. You know, so these were actually used on somebody, this material. I was there, I saw that. But here's a regeneration product 5 milliliters of prostata. This fella that was dying of prostate, they called it prostate cancer. Their remedy for it was to castrate him, and he didn't want to be castrated. He decided he had to go looking elsewhere for something else, you know. And so the material that came out of this bottle he used to rebuild his prostate after he'd killed the cancer. Yeah. Yeah. He got 5 of these, all told, over a 2.5-week period. Yeah. Back to normal function in just a few months. See, that's kind of important. Remember, killing cancer is one thing. Repairing its damage is another. And you gotta repair the damage. You've gotta start boosting that immune system right away when you get cancer. Even if you've got to take the over-the-counter health food material to try to build that up, you gotta get on it. Because the cure for cancer is elevating the immune system. That's the cure. I said, doctor, are there people being treated for cancer that don't have cancer? He said, yeah. Well, I said, what's the worst case scenario? And he said, well, about 50% of the tumors in the breasts that are diagnosed aren't cancerous. But he said it's difficult for them with their technology to determine. And so, when in doubt, you've got cancer. Well, I said, how many actually survive that really have cancer to begin with in the conventional treatment? And he said every once in a while one will slip through the cracks and survive. Those that really have cancer to begin with. Because he said there's nothing in the treatment to enhance the immune system. And he said the cut, burn, and poison theory only tears down the immune system. Zing, 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 down, 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 till there's nothing left. And cancer has a free reign. I said, you got a number you can put to that? And he said, this isn't an accurate one, but he said, if you say 1 in 1,000 survives that really has cancer to begin with, he said, that would be close. That's a terrible ratio. Anywhere as close to that is a terrible ratio. And he said the saddest thing is the doctors that are administering those treatments know it. They know it. But it's their business. People, you've got to know when you're being lied to. And for all you know right now, you might consider what I'm telling you not the truth. But I'll tell you what I'm trying to do with this is to get you to start to look and to search for yourself. Start to read up. There are some people in this country that are now recognized as being pretty good, that are conventional doctors, at least as far as status is concerned. And I have here a book. It says Whitaker on the outside of it. And there's a fellow by the name of Julian Whitaker, and he probably doesn't care that I mention his name, but I'll tell you what, he's been standing up for what's right, and he was one of the ones that I was told by my friend that I could listen to. Julian Whitaker. He has the Health and Healing newsletter. He has several publications that can be purchased. I mean, you can get a monthly newsletter, and it don't take long when you put them in a book, you know, in date order, how he covers the spectrum of the major diseases. Yeah. I've seen this man on television. I have listened based on what I know. I've listened to see, one to learn, and the other to see if he's crossways in the chute, or if he doesn't support what it is I have seen with my own eyeballs. Because you see, what I've seen with my eyeballs is something else. Yeah, something else. Now, you know, you can't see into a person's innards to see if something there is being repaired and so forth. You got to take his word for it, because he feels and he gets to know after a while. And of course, if he continues to live year after year after year after year, and he's only on keeping his immune system up, you got to tend to believe that the man's right, because he's still around. But this is one of the guys you can believe in. There's a Dr. Earl Mendel. This material you can believe in. These are guys that stress doing things to enhance yourself, not tear yourself down. And they do pretty good. They do pretty good. And they are willing to share information for pennies. And I've got many of his publications that have come free. He shares free information. That's not bogus information, it's good information. And so they do exist. They do exist, and they are very good at what they do, and they're very generous in their information. And so it's available to you. You got to look, though. Remember, you got to be in charge and responsible for your life and your well-being. And so you're the one that needs to know. Because I'll tell you, when you get to know, you can tell when a doctor's lying to you. Yes. And they do that. I have witnessed them doing that. I lost loved ones witnessing them doing that. And so I'm kind of appalled at that. There's something better. I'd like to tell you a story. This is a story from the underneath. I was present one day at a very makeshift, well, you want to call it clinic. It wouldn't fit any standards that you would know as a clinic. But there were several people gathered there. And I have 6 witnesses to what I'm about to tell you. A fella that I had never seen before in my life, knew nothing of. Come in the door, unannounced. And you could see he had a problem because he had a tumor on his right side, and he'd been operated on before, and a whole bunch of this flesh had been taken off and out on his shoulder by the establishment. But this time he appeared as he'd heard from a friend where to go. And the friend had recommended to him, because the friend had needed help a few years prior, and got very well over the help he got. So this fellow came in this door, looked around, and I can still remember the expression on his face. He's looking there for a couple of minutes, and he said, "Is this fella among the crowd?" And my friend responded, "Yeah." He said, "A friend of mine sent me." "Yeah." "I got a problem here. I have an operable tumor. It has worked into the jugular vein. The medical establishment refuses to do anything. They won't do anything. Say my age is against me. There's really nothing they can do there. And so they just basically sent me home and said that in, my last days they would keep me comfortable with painkillers. Wondered if there was anything that could be done. My friend said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, how long will it be?" My friend said, about 45 minutes, because it'll be probably 15 minutes before I can get to you and talk to you. Okay, he said, I'll just leave my car run then. In other words, he wasn't going to bother to walk down this lengthy set of steps and go out there and shut off his car and come back, because he wasn't in that too good a shape. And my friend was about right. Started talking to him about 15 minutes after he came, and told him what needed to be done. And this fellow said, I've got nothing to lose. I'm going to do that. And I saw him start the treatment. Now he was receiving and assisting himself in treating that day with a cancer serum that's made in the United States. And this serum is made from natural products, natural things. And he was given some recommendation as to how much he should probably start out with, but we'll watch. My friend was watching him. All of a sudden he said, man, he said, this feels awful wet. Awful wet. My friend said, it does? Yeah. Awful wet. Well, then the treatment was enhanced further. 30 minutes after he started treatment, he was done. There was no one there that could any longer determine that a tumor existed. Now that's something we could see. It was deemed to be inoperable. It was phenomenal. It was recommended to him that he return for the next week each day to enhance the immune system. I mean, give it a jump start. If you've ever done a Kickstarter on a motorcycle, on a Harley or whatever kind of motorcycle, you got to jump on that Kickstarter to get that thing cranked up. Well, he needed a jump start on his immune system because she was a long ways down there. And I had to have it running. Yeah. Well, this gentleman is fine today. And not only does he eat good, but he also supplements his diet because he doesn't want to ever let that immune system get down again. His life depends on it. And he knows that. Nobody has to tell him. I mean, we saw it. I actually saw people that were dragged in. I mean, you know, I wished I could convey to you what I saw from these eyes, because I remember every bit of it. There was a bang at the door, and there was this man hauling his wife by the armpits. She was face down, dragging. He had just scarfed her out of the hospital in the middle of the night because he knew she was dying. And I mean, she was in bad shape. She had had liver shut down and kidney shut down for more than 3 days already. And I mean, she had an essence of just coming fresh out of the toilet. Now, I looked at it. I couldn't believe it. I mean, this thing's still alive? Man, it was cold. And my friend, he looked at her, and he looked at me, and he went, this poor lady had had both breasts removed, She now had so much cancer in the liver that the liver had shut down. Of course, part of that shutdown was due to the morphine trying to alleviate the pain. And she was still in pain. It had come all the way around the rib cage. I mean, she was loaded in the bones, and then I just, you know, like I said, I treated a lot of animals in my day. And when they're so dead, you yourself get to know that there's just no hope. You know? Well, I just shook my head too. I mean, God, you know, here's this young thing, you know, and she's more dead than alive. Well, my friend tries to talk to her, you know, and she is incoherent to begin with, and something, she picks up a little bit, so she starts to understand a little. And she needs help. Her husband's there, and he tries to talk to her. I mean, finally she got, so she was a little bit thirsty. You got that message. And so they got some water out of the fountain, you know, a little cup, and managed to get it so she could sip a little bit of that. And I'm telling you, that didn't even stay down in her stomach 60 seconds. Just a little sip of water couldn't stay in her stomach. I just make a long story short, she was bad news. 4 hours of help she got from this friend. Do you know that she hobbled? I mean hobbled now. Not too good a shape, but she hobbled. Is able to sustain her own weight out to the car at about 4 in the morning. Yeah. Husband helped her. The third day I saw her, she drove herself. The fourth day, she was perfectly erect. She had had her hair fixed, makeup on, looked like a movie star. Drove herself and her 2 kids to come and see this friend for further advice. Then I didn't see her again for 6 months. And when I saw her then, it looked like nothing had ever been wrong with her. She was the epitome of health. I saw her at this place that they set up. They were, you know, they want everybody that they knew to come to this place and eat together. It was a nice, fancy restaurant. Invited to their home. Yeah, that really happens. Yeah, that really happens. I've seen people that appeared that were hitting for congestive heart failure. I mean, they had the problems. Serious blockages in their veins. I got a chance to see this work. So I'll slip on these specs here. This is a product made in Argentina. International Plasma Corporation. It's called Socanar. I saw the material out of this bottle administered. This was administered to a friend of mine. friend of mine was in such bad shape that he could only wear shorts because of the way the legs were swollen up and the feet couldn't wear shoes. I mean, these extremities look gruesome. On the 5th day of treatment, he looked perfectly normal. I didn't even think that much swelling could go down in that period of time. It's remarkable that when you remove all the blockages in such short order, that you can feel so good. Stop walking up and down the road. He even turned young before our eyes. You know how the skin tightened up? I mean, it was unbelievable. And from this large swelling, you would think that it would be hanging in flakes. No. Removing these blockages when they get to be so severe, this is what I've been told now, that already there's some heart damage. And so here's some, I got to show you this. Here's an RN13. Material from this bottle this man was given. And guess what it repairs? The heart, the liver, kidneys, pancreas, the veins. I want to talk about vein for a minute because this friend explained to me that when you remove the blockage in a vein, the blockage that's there has kept the blood flow from some of the vein wall. You know, the layer, the outer layer of the vein, and so it hasn't had so much access to circulation, and so there'll be a number of cells in that vein where it's plugged and no longer plugged. That'll now, because they're dead, they will now be flushed away, and of course the vein that might have a certain size hole in it, the vein will start to shrink because of the tissue being flushed away, the dead tissue. And so to prevent that, they put RNA DNA in the body that makes vein cells, and those vein cells go to where, or that material goes to where it matches and makes new cells. So as the body is sweeping away these dead cells, it's actually replacing it with new cells from RNA DNA. And they make the double helix from the RNA DNA and they make the cell. So those cells get made where they need to be. It is a natural function of the body, and of course it's enhanced when you add the raw materials. And so you have no shrinkage of the vein once you've cleaned the veins. And it cleans them all in the body. I mean, this friend of mine, not only did he look normal, but he even had the thought and action pattern of a normal person, which was questionable prior. Because there was also brain in that RN13. I mean, he's alive and well. Don't have any swelling of the ankles or legs, or he does everything he wants to do. He's unrestricted. What I'm saying is that there are so many good treatments in the world that are being denied access here to we the people within the United States of America. There are, this is my count now. There could be way more. There are 40 that I've found, cancer treatments, that exist in the world that are not administered in this country. I have only seen some of them work, and work very well. Are there hoaxes out there? Yeah, there are. So one's got to know, because then you can separate the hoaxes from those that aren't, if you have some basic knowledge. And of course, seeing is certainly believing. The farmer's interest in this was that those that got themselves in financial trouble, one of the first things they lost was their insurance because they didn't have money for it. They're sitting in a situation of ultimate stress. You see, many farmers have already committed suicide because they couldn't figure out any way out. And they get terrible upset stomach and they get diarrhea. Their immune system, due to the stress and other things, starts to deteriorate, and they end up sick, and they just don't have the money. Plain and simple, and can't get it anywhere for decent treatment, at least what they perceive to be. And so they wanted to know if there was anything out there that was cheap, that worked, that they could get, that they could administer. They wanted to know. And the answer is, yeah, I've only touched the surface. Joint repair. So many people suffer from disability in joints, hips. Another story, really happened. A friend of mine got the feeling that I was headed somewhere someday in the future. And he said, Ron, when you go, you hear me? We've been friends for years. Yeah? You gotta stop by and pick me up, because I got this serious problem. Yeah? Yeah, okay. Promise me now. Yeah, promise you. Having known him for so many years and seeing what caliber of person he is, you know, I had no fear of that kind of person. Generous to others. Knows how to keep his mouth shut. Yeah. I arrived on the scene unannounced. He said, well, yeah, I asked you to come, made you promise to come, and you're here, but I ain't got time to go. Well, I said, friend, I'm here, I promise. I don't care whether you got time to go or not. This is your one chance. Now, he sort of slept on that overnight. He was ready to go the next morning. And we went many, many miles. He had a hip joint that needed replacing. You know, I got to watch this revolutionary, simple, easy to administer treatment for that hip. And I mean, when I saw what was being done, and I mean, I'm looking now, I'm even looking over the shoulder, because I can't believe the simpleness of this, let alone, and it's hard for me to believe that that type of process would work. Yeah. Well, he got a hip replacement equivalent for $300 worth of materials and free technology. He had a method of tightening the muscle around the joint to keep the joint from leaking the fluid, which was the root cause in the first place. I never seen anybody do that anywhere. And then he got some joint repair. If there's a speck of cartilage left in the joint, it can be rebuilt. Because this RNA, DNA that makes up that joint and the various joints in the body, it'll travel in the bloodstream. And it'll go to where, but it has to have some cartilage there in order to be able to match in, to find the spot, and then it just repairs. Now this was quite a few years ago, and I talked to him a week and a half ago. And I said, friend, how's the hip? Oh, he says it's absolutely fine. I haven't had any problem with it since. Yeah. I have a friend who for 45 years had been treating himself with insulin. He got the type that they get when a person's very young in age, about 10 years old when he got it. He was so accustomed to every morning filling that syringe full of insulin, and then he'd just stick himself in the stomach, and then he'd run hard all day long and eat like crazy to use up all the insulin. Well, he decided at his old age he was going to have his pancreas rebuilt. By using this material. And I got a kick out of him. He went on his own because he was now accepted as a trustworthy person, and that he knew where to go, that he could, be a sincere enough person to do the follow-through too. But after so many years of giving himself insulin, he became such a habit, such a mental practice that's burned into his brain that he had a tough time following the rules. And the rules are you start weaning yourself off of insulin, little bits at a time, so that at a period of 6 months after you've had the rebuilding materials, that you would be at zero as far as synthetic insulin is concerned. But if you come off slowly, it'll start to kick the pancreas as it is, in whatever form it's in gear a little bit. Start to produce, start to produce, start to produce. You see, what happened in his case is that his immune system attacked his pancreas and got it down to, well, now it was being built back up, one cell at a time. Well, he never reduced his intake of synthetic insulin until one day he had a heart attack. And of course, the last thing you worry about when you got a heart attack is insulin, because it felt like a Mack truck was sitting on his chest. And through all that commotion and the fact that he had to be stabilized and then rushed into some emergency bypass surgery, he ended up with 6 bypasses. I've never heard of anybody getting more than 4, but he got 6, and he tells me you can get as many as 12. Well, I said, where do they get all the veins? He said, well, you got to watch out for this organ in the middle so you don't take it out of there, because he said there ain't many places left on 6 that he could see. Gosh, he said, if I'd have known I had this problem, he said, I would have taken care of it, years ago. But he got it. He got the problem. But in the process, somehow or another in the paperwork, there was no insulin being administered, because apparently this facility wasn't aware, and Apparently he had forgotten to tell him that he's got to fill his syringe every day, you know. And so for 2 weeks, he got to thinking, you know, when he started, you know, getting with the world again, that it must be in one of these bags hanging, you know, that he was getting it because they were putting it in there and he was getting it. And they didn't care. But then he got home, you know, and he was taking some follow-up medication and so forth, and he got to think, well, it must be in there somewhere. Well, he got busy here, and he dug out the old PDR, you know, the physician's desk reference, and he's looking, you know, at all the stuff that he's taken now, and he's checking, and none of it got any insulin in it. Now, when he called me, he'd been 5 weeks without any insulin. And he said, it's strange. He said, my blood tests show I don't need any either. Yeah. How many diabetics out there could save their eyesight, save their arms and their legs, their feet, their toes, live a normal life if they watch their diet? So they're taking in the proper fats, not the improper ones, which obstruct the flow of insulin that they do produce, or build that organ up to where it produces at the right level again. I mean, it just stalled off so many health problems. See, had I known at the time that there was an exotic treatment, it certainly would have been tried, but I didn't know. I mean, when it was first detected, whatever it was, on my wife, it had only taken just a matter of days and the problem wouldn't have been there and she'd be here. Some of the other things that I've seen, in treatment is the rebuilding of the colon after the colon cancer has been knocked out. Now, I've seen the process. I obviously didn't take a scope and go check. You hear? Take the word of the people and the fact that they're alive and well without an ostomy bag. On a bit of the humorous side, Julian Whittaker come out with another little pamphlet that I got, wherein he has taken the time and the effort to research Viagra. And that's kind of a humorous topic, and a lot of people make jokes about it these days. And he says it's really something. In his publication now he says this, and I tend to believe it because of the kind of guy he is. And what I've seen of all the rest that he said, that I know to be so. He says that Viagra is one of the things created by the pharmaceutical industry that has little, and if any, side effects. Negative side effects. He says it's once in a great while they'll come up with something that doesn't destroy more or do more harm than it does good, and he says this one does almost no harm at all. So if anybody's feeling lonely out there and feeling in need of companionship, like probably in the younger days, he highly recommends that one. Not only for the males, but for the females that might be listening, he recommends that too. Yeah, there's one of the few things that's good, if you have the need. Okay? I want to talk something that I learned about fats, you know. You know, when I was a kid, I was in 4-H, and I was in 4-H till I was 21 and basically kicked out. And I raised animals, and I had fat steers, and you know, and we raised sheep and we fattened the wethers, and we went to the shows and so on and so forth. And you know, during my tenure in the 4-H, tenure, excuse me, in the 4-H, the breeding of animals started to change. You see, when we first started, the steer that would be at the shows, at the fairs and at the achievement days, where the 4-H members would go and compete against each other. The steer would have to be standing out there to be judged, and it would have to have about a 2-inch layer of fat all over the carcass. You know, because those were the ones that got the blue ribbons and the reserve champions and the championships. Well, it changed. It started changing dramatically in '57. And I didn't know why. But it was breeding towards leaner, more muscle, and so on and so forth. Well, there was a lady that had to do with that. She was probably the biggest one of all to do with it. And her name was Johanna Budwig, Dr. Johanna Budwig. A German lady who had made, at that time, full use of the electron microscope. And she had determined some very basic facts on the consumption of fat, what it was really doing. And it was in '57 that she'd probably made her findings prior to that and had spoken numerous places, but she met in Europe where all of those that know what they're doing supposedly appear, the higher ups, the upper echelon of the medical community and doctors and researchers and so forth. And she made a phenomenal speech, and I read her speech. It was translated into English, and I read it. And then when I look back, I can see what was happening. What she says has stood the test of time on the intake of saturated and unsaturated fats. And the way the industry is today, if you consume the saturated fat, you are much better off by twice than the unsaturated, because of the processing that the unsaturated oil has gone through. Now that shocked me, because I had constantly believed for over many years of my life that it was the reverse. But no, in her book, read her speech, and you'll come to know how to handle fats and what's good for you and what isn't, and you need fats. I mean, that liver is the furnace of the body, and it's got to oxidize fat, create the heat. And so you got to have the furnace running good, you hear, or otherwise the rest of the system not going to run too good, and it ain't going to run long. But I'd like to quote from this, and by the way, this just came in the mail yesterday, and it's called the Healthy Cell News. But here she is, pictured, and she's quoted here. The chemical processing of fats destroys the vital electron cloud within the fat. Once the electrons have been removed, these fats can no longer bind with oxygen, and they actually become a harmful substance deposited within the body. Here is the big source of the buildup in the veins. That's the stuff that leads to heart attack. The heart, for instance, rejects these fats, and they end up in inorganic fatty deposits on the heart muscle itself. And it goes on. The veins too. The veins too. So, she makes it clear in her book that taking cold pressed, that which has not been destroyed, cold pressed oils, olive oil, fish oil, flaxseed oil, that combines with oxygen, and that oxidizes and doesn't leave these residues that are floating all over. And the saturated, the good old cow fat, That's half as bad as the conventional processed corn oil, sunflower oil, and those things of that kind. They start out good, but you see, the oils are extracted with hexane, and then the oil is heated to evaporate off the hexane, and that's the ruining process there. And so make that clear, and if you read that, you will see how important it is to your health, and how important it is to keeping that immune level up. It's the most basic thing. So I want you to take some time now. It depends on how long you live. If you take no time to take care of yourself and keep your immune system up, you're not going to be too long on this earth. And if you rely on all specialized help to keep your body alive, the odds aren't in your favor. And so take a little time now, and then you can enjoy your age, probably your Social Security too. People do so many things to hurt themselves. You know, I used to smoke. Should have never. Didn't start till the late 20s. I mean, I was almost 30 years old. Should have never. It does so much damage to the human system. The desire to smoke, still have it. But the mind is plugged with enough information now that won't let these hands pick one out of the pocket, stick it in and light it up. Because there's enough information there to stop that. Those smoke particles are abrasive. Some of them get through the lungs, into the bloodstream, and it scratches. That's my terminology for it anyway. The liners, you know, where the blood's coming through, and you get your buildup starting from that. That's fat that won't oxidize, got to be parked somewhere. You just can't float indefinitely. Your blood gets so thick after a while, it won't pump. You know, got to park it somewhere. And that's what happens. But there's abrasiveness. You don't want this. It picks the place to park it when you start abrasing these walls of these veins. So those are some of the few things I've learned. Maybe I can sum this up, but I'll check to see how much time we got. Well, we got a little bit of time yet. Like your rights. Your health is your responsibility. There is a vast world out there of available treatments all over. This country doesn't have a franchise on all of them, not even close. In the education that I've received so far, I'd have to say that the Germans are head and shoulders above any of the other countries. And you know, it is so funny to learn one of the crucial things of life. This material is separated in a process. You know where it all comes from? This stuff comes from the afterbirth. When a child is born, you know, there's the afterbirth, the placenta. In this country, we're so intelligent, we throw it in the waste paper basket. Goes out in the garbage. Yeah. They have processed. They've set up the system whereby they separate this RNA, DNA that's laying loose in that placenta and categorize it and bottle it and seal it so that it doesn't deteriorate. And it is interesting to know, you know, because we've all heard, I'm sure, of transplants and the possible rejection and so on and so forth. Well, RNA, DNA is behind the immune system. Not on the front side of it, it's on the back side of it. And it is the same, regardless of age, regardless of whether you're male or female, regardless of the color of your skin or where you live. If you're a member of the human race, the RNA, DNA is the same for every member of the human race, for the organs and glands of the body. There is no immune response, negative response to this material. I have not seen it anywhere, and I have used it. You hear me? What I don't know now is how credible the DNA marking system is that prosecutors use to put people away. How credible is that when the RNA, DNA is the same if you're a member of the human race for every organ and gland of the body? I've even seen them administer to repair a damaged muscle. Muscle. You know that thing that closes your fists? Those are muscles. Raises your arm. Yeah. Yeah, seen that repaired. Yeah, I mean, when somebody can do it, you know, it's repaired. When you couldn't do it before. So this material we're wasting. Now, I got to give the president credit. One of the first things he did when he took office, way back when he was first elected, and he took office for the first time, is he signed a bill authorizing this French drug, RU-46, to come into this country. It may be around here, and it may be being administered now, but he authorized it to come in. One of the reasons he authorized it is because it was a very inexpensive. Readily, the availability was great. You could get it. It was relatively easy to make. And it killed cancer cells. Big time. Just an oral pill. Otherwise known as the birth control pill. But for men or women, it kills cancer cells. And it is very effective. It has the tremendous capability of penetrating to get to them. You see, I said earlier, 56 to 60 days after conception. I mean, the woman certainly knows she's pregnant. If she took one of those pills, it would kill, because the fetus is connected at that time. It would kill, because that's 100% cancer. And that's how it kills it. Well, I'm not in favor of destroying fetuses. I'm just not in favor of that at all. As a matter of fact, I'm opposed to that. But saving people's lives that already exist by a very cheap, readily available, at least other parts of the world it is, a drug that one can take orally that has an infinity for cancer cells. No, we're missing the boat. And we don't want to let our religion get in the way of good health. Now, you know, you can read that Bible and understand the law and the things there that you need to do, and I don't dispute those at all. But let's not take the practice of that and religionize it and use it against ourselves. Now, the Lord never meant for that. He meant for you to have life and have it more abundantly. And so some of these philosophies are devastating to your health and your longevity. And remember here, whose hands has He got here to do good? He's got yours. And if you're at a place pushing up daisies, you can't do any good there. So stretch it out. Gives you more time to do good. Gives you more time to participate and help others. Keep yourself alive. The final question, that I asked my friend one day. I said, with this technology that exists in the world today, how long would you perceive people to live? Well, he said these treatments, many of them, he said, are good from 25 to 30 years because he had to use them on himself. He had inoperable cancer, and it had damaged portions of his body. As a matter of fact, it had already taken the whole side off his face before he started looking for himself what else might be out there, because there wasn't nothing more they could do. But he said this, with the technology that now exists, the average life of a human being should be 125 years. The Lord said it best. My people perish for lack of knowledge. And we have allowed ourselves in this country to let profiteering rule our access to nature's things, the things that the Lord put on this earth, to have life and have it more abundantly. Profiteering is the devil's tool in that scenario. I have said in another tape, that I don't find fault with the capitalistic system as we have structured it in this country. I find fault with lack of knowledge of it and the misuse of it. The doctors took a solemn oath. They signed a contract for that privilege of theirs. They're obligated under that contract to do what's good for you. The pharmaceutical companies that exist in this country, they're obligated to do good. Their obligation is off track. They're off on the profit mode and the profit mode solely. And they're influencing the Food and Drug Administration big time. And we're restricting the flow of the inexpensive treatments. I mean, what would you think, and based on what you now perceive, would be the most expensive material you could buy? If you had to go underground into the black market, wouldn't it? That's the term given it. I just say, man, it's not black, it's the light market. It sheds light on what really is. But look at, that's where it would be the most costly. Well, where can you go uptown or anywhere in this state and get a hip replacement for $300 with no downtime for yourself? Where can you get all your veins cleaned out for well under $500? Well under. I'm talking black market prices. And guess what? They have a little different philosophy down under. If you can't afford to pay the cost of the material, you get it anyway. Because you need it. Those of you hearing me, if you should have medical trouble and you need help and you don't have the funds for it, I highly recommend you go to the emergency room in any facility in this country. I mean, what else can you do at that point in time? Get there. Stay there. Don't walk home until you've got treatment. Because they are all obligated in the emergency room process to give you treatment whether you can afford to pay for it or not, and they got to post a plaque on the wall to that effect. So look for it. Read it. You see, there's a system in this country of a 20% overbilling to subsidize non-payment. You are entitled to medical help. And so if you find yourself in the lower end of the economic ladder and you need help, you can get some of that help. You're going to have to buy yourself some time somehow so that you can get to studying the problem that you got and find some better solutions. You can do that. I'm just trying to tell you that, hey, there's some good solutions out there. But you got to, use the old bean. One, you got to exist. You need help. When you try to do what you can to help people that are on the low end of the economic ladder, you get to know some of these things because you check in the law to see what remedy they have in the law to get medical services. I'm telling you, there's there. A friend of mine once. Have we got time for this last story? Got 10 minutes. Called me, and she was crying. Mother was so sick. She was on 13 different medications, and she was so sick. And they had no money. Neither her nor her dad and her mother. They just didn't know what to do. And I said, well, from what I've researched of the law, I'd take her to the emergency room right away and have them get started on helping her. And but we don't have no money. I said, take her there. For gosh sakes, take her there. What can you do for her at home? You don't know what to do you? No, they didn't know what to do. Well, they shouldn't have waited that long, but they did. And it's a real part of life. Took her there. She calls back 3 hours later and she's still crying. They refused to treat my mother because we couldn't prove we could pay them. Oh, they did, huh? Well, where's your mother now? Well, we had to take her home. I said, you had to take her home? Yeah. Well, I said, look, if it was my mother, I'd have her in that car, I'd take her over there, get her in the wheelchair, roll her in the door, and leave. She's my mother. I can't do that. You want her dead? No? Then you and Dad leave her there. Inside the emergency room. You leave her there. And leave. Well, they got into gear then. And she got good treatment. Because the life was in their hands and they were responsible for it. They were the one holding the privilege. And then, of course, they knew what they don't want everybody to know. They had to treat her whether she could afford it or not because they swore to. Took an oath. And to compensate for that, they got a system of overbilling everybody else. Okay, don't take a bone with that. But let's not deny anybody medical treatment in this country. There's a certain value put on life in this country, whether we like it or not. When you're in the fetus, you're deemed to have no value by the government and the system. I believe there's value of life there, but that's just my belief. The system ain't operating that way. Because there's murder for hire if that's a real life, and I believe it is. But from the time you're born, you start to increase in value. One, as soon as you're born, you supposedly have all the civil rights. I think you should have it at the point of conception, but that's just my belief. Anyway, once you're born, you get civil rights. And as you get older and get more education, they deem, shall I say, the system and the law, especially the insurance companies, deem your life to be more valuable. And of course, once you get up through college and so forth and get this education in the old bean, or at least which one you got, whatever you got there, you're deemed to have more valuable yet. And of course, you reach a stage in life where you're deemed to have the most potential, the most capability, the most common sense, and you're deemed to be worth the most. Well, in that process, you reach that high point, and then you start to lose value. And if you should end up in a senior citizen's home, there by yourself, and you start to have medical trouble, you're not deemed to be very valuable anymore. You're deemed to be a burden. And you will be denied things if you don't know what it is you need to have and insist on it. You will be denied things that will prolong your life. Quality life. Because at that stage you're deemed expendable. Look at the insurance actuaries and you'll see where you are in life as to where they think your value is. You know, and even if you sue down here at the very end of what is perceived to be you spent many good years, you know, well then you're the most intelligent because you've had all of this extra education. They're deemed that you aren't much value, and they will let you expire. Remember the two basics. 80% of the death that occurs in this country is one, being denied treatment that would help you, and the other is being given treatment that they know will kill you. Those two things, you got to know the difference of. Your life and its extent depend on it. I care for you very much. I want you to live healthily, and I'm telling you the only way you can live a long time and healthy is you must take the ball. Yep, you must take it in your hands. Go to that mirror and say, I'm it. I'm the one that's going to see to it I'm going to live a long time. And do as much good as I can on this earth. That's it for today. Thank you very much for listening, and God bless you.